So wait, before we go inside, why don't we get a shot of this incredible foyer where we are here? And I think maybe our listeners can tell just from how we're whispering and the sort of sound of this beautiful hall that we are maybe not outside like we normally would be. And instead, we are inside the Blanton Museum of Art.
Here. I'm stoked to, I'm excited about that.
This was your idea, and I have to give you huge kudos because A, I didn't think we could pull this off and get access to the Blanton, and somehow we managed to. And B, it's raining today, crazy. Yeah. And so I was thinking we might have to cancel. Yeah. But then you had this idea, and lo and behold, our producer Dayton has a connection to somebody here at the museum. And next thing you know, we're filming our episode in the Blanton, which is
so glad to do. I mean, I wanted to come anyway because I'd always heard about this museum, but I haven't really spent any time in Austin. I came once and visited a friend of mine, but didn't get a chance to come here. Yeah. So I think it dovetailed in a cool way.
Oh, it's amazing.
I think it's all entwined with, I think, a bunch of stuff that we'll talk about.
I love how it's like apropos for your career, and you are related to a fine artist with your grandfather that I read. So it works on multiple levels, and it's a first for our little show. Yeah. So thank you very much for making this happen.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Awesome.
Have you been here before?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. I went to grad school here at UT, and our company, The Bear, made like an early promo for the Blanton. So we shot a bunch of stuff in here and used to come here a lot in between classes and stuff. Cool. What were you seeing? What were you reacting to right there?
I didn't want to come in and look, and I didn't even give a shot while I was waiting for you. I was like, I don't want to look at the catalog or anything, because I know they have an amazing collection here.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to spoil it, so I'd read away. I don't know how this wall is curated.
I mean, there's a Rothko right there.
There's a Rothko, and I think that's a Jacob Lawrence.
Whoa. Is that right? Let's see.
Yeah. That's so Jacob Lawrence. Do you know who Jacob Lawrence is?
No. And point it out again. Is this one right here with the brick wall?
So one of the things that I think is, so I learned of Jacob Lawrence's work, like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
He made this incredible series on the Great Migration of Black people in the United States migrating north from the labor opportunities in the northern states from the South.
Okay.
And he made this incredible narrative depiction. So like he paints in series. I don't know if all of Jacob Lawrence's work is that way.
Yeah.
But he's mostly known as being a painter that paints in a sequence. So he's really literally telling a story in a collection of paintings.
Whoa.
So I don't know if this looks to me like it might be part of
the
Great Migration series.
It looks like a panel of a much larger story, like you're saying. And it's like black, sort of shadowy figures walking along the base of what is a very tall brick wall with like just a sliver of blue sky behind it. And it looks like a man and wife and 2 little kids.
And he was just such a storyteller. You don't really see, all this stuff is about storytelling, vocabulary. But someone that worked in that devoted way of making series of paintings of specific aspects of experience. There's a painting from that series that always really stuck with me, of this woman reading a letter, laying in bed, reading a letter from home once she's arrived up north. So that's super exciting.
And
Andrew Wyeth.
Oh yeah, big time. Lots of Andrew Wyeth here. Yeah, this is beautiful. An old man sitting in a rocking chair looking out at sea, which I also have to say is very apropos of your movies, because here, there's a guy looking out at the sea here. That looks like a ship at sea up there. Here are boats on the water here. This one sort of looks like an impressionistic view of the ocean, maybe from the beach. That looks like a couple dancing on a pier with the ocean behind them. That is a beach with a ship in the distance. And this one, and look, that's a beautiful, like, wow, sort of impressionistic ship during a storm. And you are here in Austin with your beautiful film about fishermen in Maine, right? Yeah. So, how apropos is this?
Totally. And especially Wyeth. And as I always love, so Andrew Wyeth, when he painted, I don't know if it was always the case, but his wife, Betsy Wyeth, titled most of his paintings. And they always have these great, super simple titles. This one's called Sea Legs. And Wyeth painted, this was Wyeth kind of broke up the places where he painted between Chatsford, Pennsylvania, and Cushing, Maine. This is obviously, I've seen this figure before. Wyeth painted the same people over and over and over again for decades.
Interesting.
Which is, I think, something that I really, really like about his artistic process, that he had these long relationships and chronicled people over time. And I think, I've been thinking, actually, like, as I approach the Maine project, I don't make photography that in any way is attempting to emulate the aesthetics of Andrew Wyeth, but there's something in the spirit of the way that he worked I just love so much, and he was so exacting. It's almost photographic.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you sort of get a sense for the character of the old man here in the rocking chair, and he looks sort of at once like a little bit defeated and elated to be looking out at the sea, which I think is, again, apropos for your movie, because the fishermen that you film with all kind of have that same tormented relationship with their profession. So I think this is a good place for us to stop and introduce you and play our theme song. And then we'll come back.
Cool.
Ding, 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 ding.
All right.
All right. So as we mentioned, we are here at the Blanton. This is a first for our show. And we are here because our guest today is visiting from New York, Pete Muller.
On your left.
You're listening to Dock Walks with Ben and Keith.
Here for the Dock Days Festival at the Austin Film Society. And I know from reading about you, this is the first time that we're meeting.
Yeah.
And I know from reading about you that you come from a fine art photography background, and your grandfather on your mother's side was a fine artist of like some acclaim, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah. So my mother's father was a painter. He was a draftsman or painter. Like the guy could really draw incredibly, and then he painted as well. And he's kind of, I mean, to some extent, I suppose maybe his paintings are a little bit better known than his drawings, but he was really one of the pioneers of American surrealism.
Wow.
So
and what was his name?
His name was Leon Kelly.
Okay.
And he was from Philadelphia. He grew up in Philly, and his father was a tailor, and he had a relatively successful tailoring business, and then ready-made tailored clothing came online in like the 19-teens and decimated his father's business. His folks split up. His father fell on really hard times, started to live in a YMCA in Trenton, New Jersey nearby, and he moved in with his mother and his grandmother, and I think he dropped out of high school and he was working in a bakery. He started taking drawing lessons from this guy in his neighborhood and really took a shine to it, and the guy encouraged him, said, you have talent, and encouraged him to try to enroll at the Pennsylvania Academy of Art.
Oh, wow.
Which he did.
Okay.
And from there, he was to some of the instructors, and some of the instructors there were really cool people of acclaim.
Yeah.
They said, you've got talent. They gave him this fellowship or scholarship called the Crescent Fellowship, which allowed him to go to Europe. And he arrived in Europe, in Paris, in 1925, just after André Breton had made the manifesto on surrealism. So he spent 1925 to 1930 in Paris, being exposed to all this incredible avant-garde shit that was going on in Paris at that time.
Okay.
Ran out of money, came back to the United States. It's Thomas Hart Benton. Came back to the United States and took that, all that he'd learned in Europe at that time, and started to make it his own in this kind of uniquely American form. But there really weren't too many artists at that time doing that.
Yeah.
So I grew up, he was really hermetic and didn't glad hand. He didn't promote his work. So he was he lived in isolation.
Really? And you know so much about your maternal grandfather. You must have really studied him.
Oh, I think he's interesting. It was pretty, truth is, it was kind of an onerous thing in the family, because when he passed away, he's respected among people who know American art, but he wasn't commercially, he's not a household name. So he died with basically nothing, and he left this incredible body of a life's work. It was prolific.
Right.
But that shit has to be cared for.
Right. I see that firsthand. My business partner's father was a fine art photographer, and our office is literally overflowing with his framed prints, because it's what do you do with it after that? And then my brother-in-law, same thing. His dad was a painter. of some acclaim here in Texas, and he taught at a university in Huntsville. And same thing, my sister and her husband are like, just, they have so much artwork. It's like they don't have enough walls to cover, to house all the art. And it becomes like almost like a family affair to figure out like what to do with this stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
It's a really interesting situation I hadn't thought about until I've seen it through these people I'm close with.
Yeah.
You know?
It seems cool to have somebody in your family that does that.
But it's also,
huge
it's a responsibility because you're carrying on their legacy, basically.
Totally.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny talking about grandfathers. My grandfather was a professor of piano, and he was the dean of music schools, mainly in Kansas, at Wichita State and the University of Kansas. And he had maybe it's just the same style, but he had it's Picasso, the very famous Picasso painting of the musician. Have you seen that? It's basically like this. It's like the same colors, and it's cubist, and it's a quintet, I believe, playing, and it's his like conception of like what music looked like, and he had it hanging above his piano. So one of my earliest memories of art was looking at Picasso's musicians in this same style.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
That's a hell of a first.
So you grew up with this grandfather who's a well-regarded, well-known painter. When did you know that you were an artist also?
I'm like, the truth is that I'm very uncomfortable with that term.
Really?
Yeah. And in fact, like, it's like kind of a weird time in a way to like have any conversation about it, because I just feel like very kind of,
let's go up those stairs here.
I don't know, creatively like in transition, because really, like I've been a photographer.
Yep.
Through my creative life, whatever, like I do write stuff, but it's not been my mainstay is not writing.
Yeah, you're primarily known as a National Geographic photographer,
I've
right?
been doing pictures for them. I started doing pictures for them in 2014, and I've like mostly kind of been doing various projects with them since.
Okay.
So that's been great. They're very cool, and our kind of the way that I work and the way that institution works, there seemed to be a cool confluence of our interests. But I was always a photojournalist.
Oh, interesting. And so you think of yourself as more of a journalist than an artist?
No, not anymore. Like there was a while there, because I worked for news agencies and newspapers and magazines and stuff, and I was based overseas for a long time.
Yeah, I read you were based in like Palestine and
I was there
Sudan.
for a while. Yeah, and then Sudan.
Wow.
And I was doing news stuff, because like, I don't know, I also like another part of that story is my mother was a newspaper photographer.
She was?
So
wow.
When I was a kid.
And where was this? Where did you grow up?
So she was the nighttime newspaper photographer for the Lynn daily evening item in the city of Lynn, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But before that, we had lived, her and my sister and I lived in the southern part of New Jersey, where her parents had lived.
Okay.
And then we moved to New England because my father is from New England. And
yeah, I hear the Boston a little bit. My father, just really? The way you said it. No, that's good. That's
really
good.
Know how that comes across, or if and when it comes across, because I feel like it's kind of an interesting, like, sort of code switching type.
Oh, funny. Like you can put it on when you're around other people from the Northeast.
When I was a kid, and when I was living with a lot of the guys that I went to high school with, and like where I thought I was going to stay and be.
Yeah.
That felt like a very native affect.
Right.
But I feel like I've gone to a lot of different iterations of myself over the years. But this museum's
it's incredible. I know it's hard to not be commenting on all this incredible art that you see, that we have around us.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're seeing.
Well, we just went through a room. I mean, all this stuff, I guess, in a way, is kind of germane to the story. Like, we went through this room of very old European art.
Yeah.
So my father, who I'd grown up with, he was separated from my mom, but the guy that I always knew to be my father was a conservator. Of art. So he did technical restoration and fixed paintings.
You have art running through your whole family.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's amazing. Everywhere. That's so cool.
Yeah. And I thought, honestly, I was like, that's why I have trouble with it. Because I'm like, as a kid, you know, like things were a little rocky in my family between people, and not everybody was making the most responsible decisions all the time. And that had like a fair amount of impact and effect on me as a kid, my sister too. And I felt like I started to think that like the art world was just like filled with a lot of bullshit, you know, and I was like, I don't want to be part of this. And so, you know, to be a visual person, but to be a journalist of sorts, at least at the outset, I'm like, well, this is more organized. You know, this is.
So you were rebelling against your rebellious family members. It sounds like.
I don't know, like probably some cycle of weird, you know, intergenerational oddity of people trying to define themselves as being apart, but like fundamentally following a path that is similar in some regards.
Well, here you are. I mean, now you're a film director and you're a fine art photographer by way of journalism. So wait, I cut you off. So you were describing growing up in Massachusetts. Your mom was a newspaper photographer.
That's right.
So then, how did you get on board the artistic family train here?
I guess it just felt like a series of events that were sort of cosmic in some way.
Yeah.
That I wasn't going to be able to escape this stuff. Like I wanted to have a more normal life.
I'm laughing because this is very endearing. Like most people, I feel like, who are artists are like, you know, rebelling against their parents who are, you know, very stable and straight-laced, and you know, you tamped down their artistic ambitions, whereas you were coming from a family where it was like, yeah, you're probably going to be an artist, and you're like, no, I want to be responsible.
I want to like have, you know, I don't know, I just wanted normal stuff, like most of like my friends from high school and stuff, you know, they have normal jobs, they have families, they have, you know, a bi-weekly paycheck and a pension plan or whatever.
Right.
They've got like a fair amount of stability in their life, and I thought that that's what I wanted.
Right.
Like, I don't know, to some extent, I guess I still do, but I think it's something that happens. It's interesting in like.
Oh, sorry. Excuse us. Sorry.
In how art tends to move through families, it's kind of like how you were describing.
Right.
It's like maybe someone's an artist and there's a lot of financial uncertainty and there's all the weirdness that comes along with an artist in the family, and then that next generation will say, fuck that, I'm going to be a lawyer.
Yes.
Or whatever. So I want some stability.
But then their kids come back around.
Right. Yeah. But in my family, it's kind of been like, just like all these generations of like people who are involved in various ways in this world.
Wow.
So that's like really cool in some ways, and in other ways just like fills me with neurosis. All kinds of shit.
I think you're doing an interesting job of combining the two, because you're here with your film Bucks Harbor, correct? Yeah. And I got the chance to see it last night in advance of the screening at Doc Days at Austin Film Society. And it is such an interesting synthesis of fine art photography, documentary filmmaking, ethnographic filmmaking. And the thing that I was really struck by is that you are making art about people who are very rough and tumble, you know, who I think would probably say, and in fact they do, one of the characters actually does talk about his relationship to art as being like something that wasn't considered serious or worth pursuing because it just wasn't a thing that anybody did in that area. And so I think you're making art about people who are often overlooked, and it has a very like practical, you're making art about practical people, I guess is what I'm saying, or very like salt of the earth people. Yeah. And it's really interesting that combination. Do you think of it like that?
Well, I never really knew if we were, you know, I didn't think when we were filming Bucks Harbor, what became Bucks Harbor. There was no part of me that was like, we're making art, you know? Like,
right. What did you think you were doing?
We were hanging out. Like, I was hanging out. My friend Nathan Golan, who was the cinematographer for the first 1.5, 2 years of the project.
Yeah.
We were hanging out and like, you know, getting to know everybody that's in the film and many others too that aren't in the final film.
Okay.
And, you know, Mike, Dave, Mark, Wayne, you know, those are, and Vicky, of course, Mike's family, his sons, Ryan and Carter, his wife Kirby, just like spending a lot of time hanging out and no, just all getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And hoping, of course, you know, that like, that ultimately we would find a way to to put it all together.
Yeah. How are you financing it, doing it that way?
Yeah, well, so we raised a little bit of development money at the outset, which we used to kind of like explore the project, you know, like what could be possible.
Okay.
And then we got through that, and I was involved initially with National Geographic through the magazine, but I became involved in their grants program some years back.
Okay, so you got a grant from them to start?
That's right. No,
Cool.
we initially raised some money through the National Geographic Society and expended that kind of figuring out if this seemed like it was going to be something possible and kind of that we'd be able to pursue it in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And then we were able in that time by like, you know, really trying to stretch the resources and stuff to come up with enough.
Here, tell me what you're seeing. What are you saying?
It's just like, this guy's one of my favorites.
This one right here? Yeah.
This is incredible. I think he was originally from Missouri.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And he was
Kansas City, yeah.
And I mean, this is super characteristic of his work. It's like these lithe figures that are almost, there's something almost cartoonish about his work. A little
yeah.
bit. He often paints these like, sometimes he makes these incredible, enormous murals that are usually tied up with mythology in some way. But he was a folk artist too. So
Yeah.
they simultaneously doing this like, pursuing some of this really highbrow stuff, but also making things that were so palatable and intriguing and playful.
Playful's a great word because they're sort of rendered accurately. Like, you know, it's very photorealistic in one way, but then they're exaggerated, and the perspective is just a little off, and the colors are a little too saturated. It's a couple holding hands in front of a tree and a wagon and a cabin, and they almost look like bigger than all the back, you know, like larger than life.
Yeah,
the perspective
it works.
Yeah.
Like it's not, there's no error to it, you know, like the proportion of it, yeah, there's something odd about it, but in my mind anyway,
Yeah.
it works. I don't know, you think
It's called romance.
romance,
So it seems like he's clearly, you know, making a comment on like falling in love and how you feel sort of out of place and larger than life, maybe.
do you think that's daylight or do you think that's the moon?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say because his shoes are off and they're like holding hands, and maybe it's like after a date. It's probably at night.
I love it. You know, it's funny when I come to museums too, because my father was a conservator and took care of that stuff. I'm always looking at things and being like, yeah, it's in great shape. Because things don't stay in great shape unless someone keeps them in shape. You know, we often like come to these museums and you look at stuff. I mean, this is not particularly old, but you look at stuff that's big. It's a piece of canvas.
Well, it's almost 100 years. I mean, yeah. 31, 32.
Right. I mean, it's got some years on it, but it's not, you know, when you start to look at paintings that people made 300-400 years ago.
Yeah, true.
And it's wood, and it's linen, and it's pigment, and it's, you know, these bonding agents and stuff, and that stuff all deteriorates and falls apart over time, like anything.
And so your dad's job was to literally like restore artwork?
Like, you know, something that happens with canvas. This is canvas, right? No, on board. This is on board. Then I always think things look like super cool when they're on board.
Super cool.
But usually, you know, all these paintings that people make on canvas, those things wilt. The stretches, the wood behind it that keeps it stretched out.
Right.
It bends, the canvas bends, paint will flake, the paint chip, the paint will separate, like all kinds of stuff out.
Yeah.
And so that's what he did was like, so I like learned about this stuff with him in a way that was super practical.
Yeah.
Which is kind of.
So did you grow up like going to museums? Like you were a little kid, like going to work with dad? Wow.
And so like I never really lived with him, but when I did, for the few years that I did live with him, he worked in a museum and I would go there and he'd have stuff like this, like, you know, on the table.
Wow.
And you know, there's a gog on it or whatever, and you look at, you know, because actually, interestingly, the one of the most introductory ways that people know what they're doing will like initially clean the paintings with saliva.
No way.
Because the acidity of saliva is like just the right amount that it's not going to damage the work.
Really?
And it will take off. It's acidic enough that it will take off like the first layer of grime.
Oh.
So sometimes when I was a kid, he'd pay me, he'd do a little freelance stuff.
Yeah.
And before he got into more specific cleaning, he'd put me in my room and say, I'll pay you some money if you spit in this beaker for like how long. He'd give me like a kebab thing, like a Q-tip with a bunch of pot, and I'd just be like in my bedroom, like spitting into a beaker.
Totally normal way to grow up.
But it was cool, but it just helped me, because I think sometimes art can, I think something.
That's a famous one. Sorry, no, keep going. Art can what?
I just think that there's so much cool stuff
Yeah.
in these museums, and
Totally.
it's so accessible. But sometimes, look, I'm all for the really, the sort of philosophical, intellectual analysis of what and interpretations of what artists are trying to communicate. So that stuff's all fascinating. I'm into it, but I also I just always have this feeling that it doesn't have to have the pretension that a lot of people feel around it, which I think so many people just find off-putting.
Yeah. Well, it was like what you were saying when we kind of walked in, and I was like, it might be a little weird that we're whispering, being in a museum and trying to do a podcast. And you said, no, you shouldn't be whispering in a museum.
Yeah, I don't want to be disrespectful. And okay, we're doing something that's kind of unusual, but it's just nice to feel a little bit, I want people to feel a little bit more comfort around this stuff. You know? To me as a kid, when I would come into environments like this that I sort of had to be in to some extent because stuff was just going on in my family that would require my participation somehow. I was a kid and I'm like most kids, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I want to do stuff. I want to do, I shouldn't be running around and breaking shit. You know what I mean? It's it's important to be careful, but it felt so constrictive.
Yeah.
And I think there were a lot of people that could could really gain cool things in their life, and if all of this just felt a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. And I remember seeing this. I don't know how I've seen this. Maybe it's actually in a lot of the Blanton advertising, but I just love this painting.
It's cool.
Called Oilfield Girls by Jerry Bywaters. There's something about her boots right there, and these red and white boots, and they're hitchhiking.
Totally.
And there's a Coca-Cola billboard and a Jack's billboard behind them, and flaming oil derricks, and it just looks very Texas.
Is that, I don't know this region of the country well. Could that be also Oklahoma? So I don't know the landscapes well enough. Does it feel, because you're from that patch, right?
I'm from Oklahoma and Kansas, and now live in Texas and have for a long time. But this looks sort of West Texas to me. I think with the flat terrain. Actually, no, I guess maybe it's more East Texas in that way, because West gets really rocky, but East see how it's flat as far as you can see and kind of deserty and just lots of big sky and oil derricks.
That's on board too. There's something so cool.
So does it make you want to spit on it?
No, I don't want to spit on it, but there's something like that. My grandfather made most of his paintings on canvas. And he made one, maybe he made more, but I have one little one that's on board.
Yeah.
And Wyeth painted a lot on board also. There's something to me, of course it's the artist also. If you don't have, if you're not a talented person, you can paint on whatever surface and it's going to look cool. But there's something that feels so vivid about things that are on board.
Right.
And it holds the paint, I think, in a cool way.
It really does. It seems very bright, almost brighter than, say, that one, even though that one has maybe more vivid colors. Is that on canvas?
He's on canvas, and he looks curious. Yeah.
Man, I can't believe where we are still. This is so cool that we get to do this. All right, so let's get back to you. Yeah, let's get back to you and why you're here. So you're making this movie. You get some money early on to develop it. But how did the idea come about? Why did you want to go to this tiny town in northern Maine and profile fishermen?
Well, I can't really say that at the outset that was the intention. What I was really thinking about at the time is that I'd been doing these projects in different ways over the preceding few years about boyhood and men and ideas of masculinity in various places. How those constructs are kind of developed.
And those were photo series?
Those were photos, it was all photojournalistic narrative photography. I'd spend, varying lengths of time in a particular place and put together a series of pictures, and I was doing these lengthy interviews with people.
Cool.
Their own, what these ideas meant to them. It's really conversational. There's no methodology. I'm not going there with a survey or anything. I'm just kind of having conversations with people.
And where did this idea come from for you? Like, why were you interested in like the different definitions of manhood and masculinity?
Well, there's like a couple of different things I think that contributed to it, but a major one I'd say was that when I was in my early 20s,
Yeah.
it was disclosed to me that the man who I always thought was my biological father was not. Whoa. And so all of a sudden I was like, it was a huge curveball.
Yeah, totally.
And I learned that the guy who was my biological father was kind of this wayward dude that like I knew a little bit, like I'd met him. I had vague recollections of him from my childhood,
Okay.
but I didn't really know him.
Yeah.
He was like, you know, kind of a wild guy, and
Okay.
was very different than the guy that I always understood as my father.
Wow.
And he had been my biological father had been a photographer, and you know had this.
And you said you were in your 20s?
I was in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. So like fundamentally what happened was that I just what I think is safe to say a sort of neurotic response to I don't want to say a trauma event because I didn't say that word trauma, but it was like kind of world shattering.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that's not what I thought was the scenario.
Sure. It breaks your whole understanding of what your family had been up to that point.
Totally,
Yeah.
in a big way. And how it manifests was I was like, well, shit, like, who am I? Am I like, I always felt like in the art world of my father, the conservator,
Right.
I always felt like I couldn't quite understand him. I didn't feel like I related to him. This super methodical, like when guys are taking layers of varnish off of a painting,
Right.
that's a very exacting thing to do with your time.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like look at this one that we're standing in front of. I mean, this is like almost a story tall, and like just imagining your dad
Dealing with something like this, and it doesn't. I mean, this is incredible in its scale, but it's extremely exacting work that's
Right.
made, for people of a certain temperament and mentality. And I was always kind of like just a little more wild.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And so when that was disclosed to me that there was this like paternity hiccup, it kind of threw my world into this like, well, so who am I?
Sure.
And I was in a male body, a
Right.
very kind of stereotypical male body and male performance that I played
Yeah.
football and I did all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I just started wondering, like, as I wondered that question for myself, I started to just kind of wonder it aloud in the world. Like, what is this identity?
Like, how do other people think about how to be a man?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
And what we've been told, all people in society, regardless of their sex, we're all like told things that are the corresponding appropriate behaviors or temperaments or ways of engaging that
Sure.
are appropriate for your sex.
Right.
And, of course, we've all been prescribed, with variation, notions that, like, if your sex is male, these
Right.
will be the sort of behavioral attributes and temperamental attributes that accompany that sex.
And did you find that, again, I read that you did this in Palestine, Sudan, like, lots of far-flung parts of the world, also back in the United States. Like, did you find that the definition of what it means to be a man is wildly different throughout the world, or are there like more similarities than differences?
I mean, there's quite a bit of variation, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
people have all kinds of
Let's keep strolling.
different circumstances and different cultural outlooks and different economic circumstances. That's really important. But I think at a fundamental level, there are some like basic things that seem to have been reinforced pretty consistently across most societies.
And what would you say those are?
I mean, I think male stoicism has been like really important. Willingness to sort of sublimate fear. I mean, at least in particular types of circumstances.
Yeah.
A kind of moratorium or a prohibition of like emotional expression of much of anything.
Right.
It was sort of my experience as a younger person. I think it had to do with like a bunch of different things, both almost more so in our culture than in my family. Although my mother could could be like pretty tough when she was young.
Yeah.
And I grew up with her. I mean, fundamentally, I grew up with my mother all those years. And I think I arrived at this conclusion, which I maintain, that like the appropriate, although in most cases people would also say it's inappropriate, but the most admissible form of male expression of feeling is anger. Allowed to be, and which basically means that we are sort of, I don't want to say instructed, but encouraged or shown that if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling dejected, if you're feeling any number of other things, hold those things back, but you can lash out. You know, not that you should, but like, is he pissed? Or is he like fucking bummed out?
Right. Feeling lonely.
Did he have like a really, really, like a bunch of things happen in this dude's day.
Right.
Or in many days.
Yeah.
That have been really discouraging.
Yeah.
And really hard to handle and to make sense of. And anger becomes this sort of catch-all of that.
That's an interesting way to think about it. And even just like, you know, we're standing here in front of, you know, these tablets. I guess they're tablets. They're like, you know, panels from probably what was a church. And like these two men portrayed, you know, one has a sword, like what we're talking about, and one has a great big key. And it's, you know, just even the visual representation of like manhood. I would guess these are probably what from, could you see a sign like?
Relatively early European stuff, I would imagine.
So let's see. Wood panel.
18th century, 1700s.
Okay, so this is from the 1700s.
Which way that goes? 18th.
I think that's right. I think it's 1700s. But it's like, you know, men have books and they're looking sort of stoically into the, you know, like right at the viewer, or they have a sword or a key. And so even, you know, what was that? Over 300 years ago, men are being portrayed in this same way that you're talking about.
It's also interesting to me, like this period of art, all we see in this period, as far as I can tell, until Caravaggio started painting like card sharps and stuff.
Right.
It's like just all religious scenes.
Yeah.
There's the Medicis in the church and stuff where like they were like, you know, they had the money. So he's like getting in line to
paint whatever they wanted.
Yeah. But like, you tell me these guys didn't do any personal work?
Right.
Like where, I don't know.
Do you think they did and it's just been lost to time, or?
I don't know. I'm always curious about that.
Yeah.
It just feels like, I don't know, it's a pretty unique fixation. I don't feel like there's ever been another period of art history where it was so uniform.
Just
everyone's just
all religious all the time.
God.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I described Bucks Harbor, but how do you describe it to people?
I've been trying to think a lot about that.
Yeah.
Because I think there's like this, it's like a really, probably a verbose way of like, oh, you know, all of these things that I sort of was really interested in as we were making the movie. And they're all in there, but in a way it's like a film about a little lobster fishing town.
Yeah.
You know, and about some people in the town.
But it seems like you're making a much larger point, especially with the beauty shots, the interstitials of the lobster underwater, and the parallels that you're drawing between the lobster, which I didn't realize lobsters molt every like couple of months or years?
It depends on their age.
Okay.
Like Dig says in there, when they're young, they're molting constantly because they're growing a lot. And then as they get older, their size gets like, you know, relatively more determined. They're not growing in as fast the stints as they were when they were young. So then the molting slows down. And they molt, like, you know, usually once a year.
Okay.
I think some of the big ones, they may maybe once a year, maybe once, you know, every little bit more.
But you're also catching these characters who are in these like wild moments of personal transition too. Like, you know, one of my favorite / most grotesque scenes is when the fisherman who used to be an addict, Dave, who becomes the harbor master, goes from having what looks like drug addict, you know, sort of horribly decayed teeth to you go to the dentist with him and you see the dentist like take out his teeth and it's so gnarly. Oh my God. And he's like looking at the teeth afterwards and holding them up. But then the next scene, he has these perfectly straight, new teeth. And it makes a huge difference. And then he goes on to be elected harbor master and, kind of becomes more respectable. And so you're clearly like catching these characters in these moments of transition, so that when we're seeing the lobster and hearing that they molt, as a viewer, I'm thinking, oh, well, this is humans' way of molting and growing and changing. And did you know that that's what you were filming and going for while you were doing it?
I mean, I did really want, there was a while where I was reading a lot about lobsters and hanging out with different lobster scientists and stuff. But ultimately, what I thought was, most interesting and felt most that's a weird picture.
That is so weird. Is that a photo or is that a painting?
It's a photo. It's gotta be a photo. Yeah, for a second I thought, who Gregory Crutzen is?
No.
That guy. He takes these really far out, interesting pictures. I mean, they get so elaborate. He sets up these incredible sets. It's like a film set. It's like he's making a narrative movie.
Okay.
And I think he's kind of influenced by Edward Hopper. The pictures are kind of alienated and odd. It's like people in these varying locations, sometimes in wild locations, sometimes in sort of peri-urban spots, rural towns. And like something bizarre has just happened, like a school bus is flipped over and there's just like one person standing there, but his attention to lighting and the way that he crafts the images. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of stuff. For a second, I was like, is that a Crutzen? Kind of has the look, but it's not.
Yeah, it does. I realize how difficult this is to like keep a straight through line in an interview with you, being in here, because we just keep going, what's over here? Oh my God. But you were right in the middle of saying when you were filming, you weren't necessarily, you were researching lobsters, but you weren't necessarily thinking that that's the analogy that you were drawing.
Yeah, it was like learning a fair amount about them.
Yeah.
But what did feel interesting to me is that in their life cycle, the most central aspect of every lobster's life cycle, is a variety of things, but high up on the list of those things is that they molt, and their molting is deeply tied to their growth. They just get bigger. They can't handle the shell, and they need to shed that shell and develop a new one.
Well, and you had to have been thinking, this is a small town. These people are butting up against the realities of living in a small town, right? Like I'm thinking of the character that, which I still can't believe he let you film him doing his drag shows on TikTok. Like that was so shocking that he, goes from this kind of mild-mannered, like lobster-trap-maker with a respectable business and a family and parents he's looking after in their old age.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you show him getting in a dress and a wig and makeup and live streaming on TikTok
to a
lot of people.
He's got like 50,000 TikTok followers. I mean,
wow. But I mean, how, I personally as a viewer was watching that very concerned for him, because I was like, this is not going to play well probably with these other like rough and tumble characters that you're not only surrounded by, but that you depend on for your livelihood. So how did you get access to that? How did that come about?
Mark's, I don't know what you call that, like it's not a career, but his like moonlighting as like a cosplay TikTok star is, people know that this is what Mark does.
Really?
Yeah.
In the town, they're accepting of that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so great.
Like, there's variation of opinion as to like between individuals as to what they think of it, but it's not a secret. He's live streaming to 50,000 people.
Wow.
He goes out.
Yeah.
Mark goes out. He usually initially was going out like on Halloween and, of days where it'd be sort of acceptable as though he's dressed up in a costume.
He'll be dressed in drag like that and go out in that town.
Oh, yeah. Like not always. And he's doing it more these days.
Yeah.
But we filmed him like one of the years he went to the Grange in one of the towns.
Okay.
And in his town, and for Christmas, and he was like he was dressed as the Grinch's girlfriend, I think, and he had like, Mark is a tall guy, and like 5 or 6 inch heels. He's like a towering figure, and he was like in these fishnets, and so, and by and large, people have a pretty live and let live kind of approach to it.
I'd love to hear that.
There's some people who don't, who don't approve of it. But
I was deeply concerned for him when when at the end of the movie you do go out and he does drive to the beach and in full drag, and I was like, oh man, please don't run into any of the other fishermen. This is going to be so awkward.
I don't know if I want to like overgeneralize about Maine, but I think there's a certain kind of like sort of live and let live approach where people don't necessarily, whether they like or approve of or like whatever it is that you're doing.
Right.
If you're doing it and you kind of do it on your own time and your own, it's, people are kind of relatively accepting of things.
I love that. We are standing in front of an Andy Warhol painting here, an original. Look at this. And it's with Farrah Fawcett from 1980. Wow.
And they've got an incredible collection.
They really do. And I love these. I studied the video art as my minor in grad school here at UT. And Bill Viola is the master. And so these are his. And these are portraits of people who all are kind of making these sort of unhappy looks.
I like how their back looks like this. I mean, I guess it feels like you're looking at them on a phone or something.
Yeah, and I wonder if these are actually, he's a famous video artist, and I wonder if these are actually either taken from video or if these are just like super slow motion video portraits, and we're catching them like in sort of like a mid.
Video, it's a video triptych, so it's lifted from film in some way.
Yeah, he makes just incredible mind-bending video work. I love him.
And I like that presentation. Is that Alice Neel?
Wow, you knew that. I don't know Alice Neel. Tell me about her.
The truth, I don't really know all that much about her work either. I know her name and I've seen some of her paintings. And I think something that I know about her is that for a long time, people didn't like care for her work. And she, I guess like a lot of artists, there's like a period where certain, people don't, the establishment doesn't quite believing, but eventually she prevailed. But I don't know a heck of a lot about her, to be honest.
It's reminiscent of David Hockney a little bit.
Like that,
yeah, with like the colors and just, I don't know, the 70s aesthetic and
like the subjects too. The kinds of people that might be in a Hockney painting.
And this kind of, I thought maybe this was a Basquiat for a second, but this is Deborah Roberts.
I don't know Deborah Roberts.
Yeah, I don't either. That's really cool. It looks like it's kind of blending.
Mixed media collage.
Yeah, like photos together. See on the face there, and the old hand, but then the body is painted. It looks like. I love the negative space around that.
Yeah, it's stark. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
So
I kind of feel these days too, like I was talking to a guy at that barbecue last night.
Yeah, talking about the dock intensive welcome party that was at Keith Maitland's house.
Yeah. And there was a guy, probably early 20s, who I think somebody mentioned was like working with the program. Some forgetting his name. Very cool guy. Said his parents had come from Romania, were partially Romanian. Anyway, he was asking me we started talking about art-related stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, are there artists that, he likes the paintings of Carl Jung. I didn't know Carl Jung made paintings.
I didn't either, yeah.
But he was showing me some of these paintings, and they were kind of cool. And I'd mentioned another artist that it reminded me of, and he was like, should I get reading about art? And I sure, yeah. If you find stuff you want to read about, sure. But I really believe in viscerally what hits you, And I think sometimes that's another, people come to a museum and they're sometimes feel a sense of obligation of how you're supposed to look, how you're supposed to experience the stuff.
Yeah.
And that you sort of owe something to each work, you should stand there and contemplate each work. I think you should just go where you feel called.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
hang out.
Yeah.
And read the thing. And if you like that, then Google it, whatever. And if it turns out that you like a bunch of the things that person did, then read.
Read about them.
Just gets way more interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like with music, right? Like browsing through a record store, and if there's something about the cover that grabs you, or And I feel the same way about museums. Ever since I can remember, whenever I go to museums, I get really tired afterwards. Like it really like takes a lot out of me.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that for a long time. And then as I've gotten older, I've come to realize like, oh, I'm visually taking in so much stimulus that I think it like mentally zaps me a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel that too.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the burden sometimes of like, if you pay a big entry fee to go into a museum, you really feel like you need to see all that you can.
Right.
I've tried to join, like I joined the Philadelphia Museum because I've been hanging out in Philly more these days.
They have the best museums. The Rodin Museum there is incredible.
Philly's got incredible art.
Philly's really cool. Yeah. Or have you been to the Mutter Museum of Medical Oddities? Dude, it's the best. It's so cool. It's like they have like human horns, like when people used to be born with horns and they would amputate them. They have those like in jars and like it's like stepping into a Guinness Book of World Records or something. It's really cool.
Philly's so cool. I'm enjoying hanging out there more.
Well, let's make our way out here. We can comment on some more stuff as we go.
And you're right about the jumping around, and I guess I didn't tire. Maybe I should have anticipated that. But if you want to like,
oh man, I'm enjoying this like crazy. No, don't take that as criticism. I mean more like I'm thinking about people as they're listening to this, and I hope it's not frustrating since they're not here to take all this in with us.
Well, I'll say this about Bucks Harbor, about as it relates to this kind of stuff, is like, you know, there was a lot of, I worked with this incredible editor on the movie, Noel Paul, he made a lot of music videos, and a friend of ours introduced us, and he started to like explore the footage and kind of see what he thought, and it was this huge amount of footage, and we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And he started sifting through it, and he did an incredible job throughout. He was so patient and so thoughtful with everything. And we wanted to make sure that we felt like, you know, the movie was like understated, you know, it was getting at stuff that we thought was interesting and important about the experiences of the participants in the film, and things that I thought were interesting to explore about men and environment and place and you know, work, labor, all that stuff. Yeah. But we didn't want anything to feel like it was just like kind of being hammered away at, or like there was anything preaching about it, because you know everybody who participates in the movies, they're such great orators, you know, and they, what more do you want?
They're amazing characters. Like every little scene that you drop into, like I'm thinking about the guy with the huge beard, Wayne, who tells the story about getting in a fight with a cop and how graphic and violent and crazy that story is, but he tells it in this like really kind of offhanded, matter-of-fact way. And then the scene ends with his phone saying, it's your ex-wife calling. And he's dodging it. Oh, it's so funny. I love that scene.
Well, that's, you know, what I was going to say is like, we want, you know, as far as like, if we're going to call documentary art, you know, and it all varies. I'm not quite sure. I feel like art's one of those things, like, you know it when you see it or something. I don't know. So it's not the category that's art, but it's, if we're going to entertain it as like being part of that at all, we really wanted it to feel like it was accessible, like it wasn't that it wasn't like, you know, some pretentious thing, and so it's real plain spoken, it's real cussy.
It's very cussy.
A lot of cuss words in the movie.
But it's also like beautifully photographed. Like you can tell that you guys are approaching it through an artistic lens. You know, that you're not just there hanging out. Like you're beautifully photographing the scene. So there's real intention and thought behind these moments that are crude sometimes, or certainly like unexpected or very rough and tumble. And I really appreciated that about it. I really liked it.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah. I mean, Nathan Golan, the cinematographer, really set the tone of the visual tone of the project in the first.
What was that like for you to not? I mean, you're a photographer. What was it like to have somebody else photograph?
Well, I admire his work so much. I mean, he's just such a great cinematographer. I mean, not only in his technical capability, you know, handling the camera and the movement and focus change and all that stuff. He's just got a great heart, that guy, you know, he's so, and his intuition of like when to stay and when to follow. He's just such a respectful, thoughtful, considerate person, and I think that manifests in his visual language.
That's cool.
And there was something that felt very aligned at a basic level between my photographs and his language and emotion.
Was it just the two of you guys most of the time? Cool.
I mean, at the most, it was me and him, and then there's like quite a considerable part. The movie is like in its final stage, what you watched. It's like about 50-50. I think maybe they shot a little bit more of the footage, but it's interspersed, you know.
So like you guys would go out just solo, you mean sometimes? Or
sometimes, but mostly we were together.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like more like producing, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And he
directing.
And not really.
Really? You were just hanging and just kind of doing what they were doing?
Directing that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, well, what is directing in documentary?
I would say that it's like working with the characters to show what they do in their normal life, but in an interesting way. It's going to be visually exciting for an audience. So a good example that we were talking about last night at Keith's Doc Intensive party said my friend Bradley Beasley made the Flaming Lips documentary called Fearless Freaks.
Oh, cool.
And there's this great scene in the movie where the lead singer of the band, Wayne, worked at Long John Silver's for like 15 years. And while he was there, the restaurant got robbed, and he had a gun held to his head and was made to lay on the floor and thought that he was about to die. And he describes this scene as being like the moment where he realized, like, I got to go full tilt on this rock band because every day could be my last, basically, right? And it's a really powerful moment, life-changing event for him. Bradley could have gotten that story in interview, you know, and cut to still photos or maybe even dramatic reenactments. But what he does instead is he has Wayne go back to the building that used to be the Long John Silver's, and there's now a Chinese restaurant. And the kids of the family that owns the restaurant are like 10 and 12, and they're fascinated that a film is being made in their restaurant. And so they're kind of hanging around the edges as Wayne is sort of like, here's the front door and here's where the fryers were, and I was standing over there behind the counter, and it's this very active scene. And then these kids being there, he's pretending to be the gunman, and he gets the kids to lay on the floor. And he's like, and so it becomes comedic. It's charming. You love Wayne even more. And then it's really impactful because you're like, oh, you kind of see the kids realize like, oh man, there's like somebody pointing a gun at me, even though it's pretend. It's like, this is pretty intense. So I'd say that's a great example of like bringing something to life, a story that really happened with an actual person, but getting them to tell it in an interesting way that you can then photograph. I would say is kind of the job of being a documentary director.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do much of that.
Yeah.
You know, there was a little while where we were kind of like, okay, well, like, let's set up the camera here, and this conversation that typically happens is gonna, but it didn't feel, the vibe was not, it just didn't work, you know? So most of what's in the film is pretty much kind of verite stuff of, you know, things that we would make an arrangement of like, all right, Mike, we're gonna come out fishing with you and the boys, or we're gonna be, you know, with Dave when he gets, you know, like when he got his teeth extracted and stuff. But, you know, it's kind of just stuff that happened over the...
Otherwise you would just go and like show up in the morning and you just kind of follow along as they went about their day. And,
see what happened.
Wow.
So
that's so cool.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's its own style, right? Of how you make documentaries, which is like that sort of Maisels brothers, like fly on the wall. You don't try to disrupt anything that's happening, and you try to just capture life as it is. And
I mean,
do you feel like you were able to do that?
I have like all this reservation about this idea of the fly on the wall.
Yeah, tell me more. Why?
Because as soon as you turn up any place with a camera, you're deluding yourself to think that there's not that you're not having some effect, you know?
Right.
I mean,
like even right now, you know, people see us walking around and talking, and everybody kind of turns and goes the other way.
Or whatever. Or sometimes, you know, the people like those are things that you'd end up thinking about, or I think a fair amount in the world of photojournalism is like, what is happening here? Because you can see, depending on the circumstance, some people have an aversion to cameras being around. Also, cameras can be an incredible attractant.
Yeah.
And there can be this kind of performance that starts to happen for a camera.
Yeah.
And so, you know, part of the discretionary responsibility in situations like that is like, wait a minute, is my presence and my camera beginning to have an effect that's like altering what the actual reality of this is?
Right.
I mean, Bucks Harbor is sort of fly on the wallish in the sense that I was, you know, fortunate to be able to like spend as much time as
How long did you spend shooting the film?
Told about 5 years.
Wow.
Maybe less than 5 years.
Oh, that's incredible.
Of like filming stuff. Maybe 4.5 years or so filming stuff.
Yeah.
And then like.
And you're editing at the same time, I would imagine, right?
Like we let a bunch of stuff pile up.
Yeah.
You know, before we got an editor involved.
Okay.
So, you know, that was kind of.
Let's go through here. We haven't gone through this part.
It was like, it was a steep mountain to climb for Noel, for our editor. But it's been so interesting to watch people watch the movie. You know,
what has been the response? Yeah,
like
tell me about
it.
it.
It seems to it's not. People seem to, like, I feel, I don't have any illusion that like anything that any of us make is going to be for everybody.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But for the people who seem to understand like what I was hoping to communicate, which is there was a lot of intention about telling a really humane story.
Yeah.
About sensitivity.
Yeah.
You know, and about the circumstances that people are in, and the sort of the, I don't know, I guess the better angels idea of what we're trying to be.
Right.
Some of the nicest feedback that I'd heard was that like in each of the profiles of the people who participated, it's like everyone's trying.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
You know?
To grow and be a better
grow.
person.
Yeah. And
That's great.
It's not easy, man. And that's so much of life throughout the world and in the United States too, man. People are struggling.
Yeah.
People are struggling. It's not easy.
But I like that there's still humor and there's still like happiness in places where you can find it.
Yeah,
you know, like in unexpected ways.
We wanted it to be funny. I mean, the guys are so funny.
Yeah.
You know? It's like people, and that felt very native to me. Like growing up mostly in Massachusetts, it was it just the sense of humor that exists everywhere. But like New England has its own kind of style, and we wanted to like really honor that and lean into it as much as we could. You know,
That's
and
cool.
in ways that hopefully. You know, I hope nobody, and it doesn't seem the case thus far anyway, that like anybody feels like there's any laughing at.
Yeah.
You know, you're laughing with people, you know.
Definitely
and
feels like that. Yeah, you're very respectful of the characters.
I hope so. I hope it feels that way.
So it premiered at the Berlinale, is that right? Amazing. And then it played True False. And then now you're here in Austin at the Austin Film Society as part of Doc Days.
Yeah.
Where does it go next?
On Saturday, we're going to show it at the Margaret Mead Festival at the Museum of Natural History.
Oh, amazing.
I hear that screen is just like huge.
Wow.
So
dude, congratulations. Cool. That's incredible.
And we'll show it. And then about a week and a half after that we go to the Seattle International Film Festival.
Cool. That's a great one. I've played there before. It's so fun.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, you got to go to KEXP and get a coffee in the lobby while you're there and watch them do their shows through their booth. Yeah. My buddy Matt owns Light in the Attic Records, and they have a little shop in there, so you can like shop for records while you're doing it. It's a great Seattle experience.
I loved it because I love music, and so I've watched a lot of KEXP like performances.
Cool.
And stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we were. I mean, in that respect, we were really lucky too. And in the film, like the score, we worked with this amazing Danish.
Piano player, right?
Yeah, he's really a jazz musician, but he's so comprehensively gifted.
What's his name?
Nikolai Hess.
Cool.
And he's who made most of the score, and then we collaborated. We were super lucky to have a collaboration with this.
Oh yeah, Hiss Golden Messenger.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I just love His Golden Messenger. I love those records for a long time.
Yeah.
And I bought a ticket to see him. So Mike Taylor, is married to a woman who's from South Portland in Maine.
Oh, okay.
And so each summer he plays a solo show at this like really great venue called One Longfellow Square. It's like a community music venue. And he plays these just incredible, intimate, amazing acoustic sets. And I went and we talked a little while afterwards and stayed in touch. And then I asked him if he might be interested in contributing somehow. And he made his visceral sort of musical reaction to the movie after I sent him a relatively advanced rough cut.
Yeah.
And that piece of music ends up being is the end credits
Cool.
of the movie.
Oh, I love it.
He's just, both of those guys, Nikolai and MC Taylor,
Yeah.
have just been such cool, creative collaborators.
Man.
Which is like, it just feels like one of the coolest things as someone who comes from the photo world.
Yeah.
Where it's relatively isolated. You know, you have an editor and you have support. I'm not saying you don't have support.
Right.
But to like have this cross-disciplinary collaboration with like so many cool people.
Yeah.
Who just really believed in like the project and like the way we were trying to make it. We weren't rushing it through.
Right.
We were just like trying to make something that just felt really human. And connected with our relationship with the environment and how those things shape us and the natural beauty of it and those rhythms, like it is the movie, Bucks Harbor is set up as like, it's through the seasons. You know, so it plays as like 1 year, which we thought was like a cool way a natural way to give it some structure.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I think you succeeded, man. And I really love your movie, and I've loved getting the chance to like stroll through the Blanton with you here.
Awesome.
It's been awesome. Thank you for suggesting this. Thank you for introducing me to a bunch of new artists I didn't know about. And where can people follow you and find your work?
Like I use Instagram, Pete. Like if you put in Pete Muller, Pete_K Muller.
Okay.
The K is my mother's maiden name, Kelly, like my grandfather. And
yeah,
I post stuff there. I'm like still kind of deciding my social media like posture, but I post. And
cool.
I write stuff and stories and things like that.
So people can follow you there, and they can find out about the movie from there also.
Yeah, I gotta start like I gotta start promoting it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I will start being more active with like the festival, screwing dates and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. I'm forgetting our lightning round questions. Okay, so we're kind of up against time here, so we'll see how fast we can do these. So first question, what was the documentary film that you saw that made you want to make documentaries?
I thought Bombay Beach was pretty cool.
Okay, I don't know that one. Tell me about it.
It's a movie by, is it Alma Harrell, I think her name is.
Okay.
It's this place, it's like a film about this place, Bombay Beach.
Yeah.
Which was like thought to be this futuristic sort of paradise vacation, live in a vacation spot, and it kind of like fell apart. It didn't work out, and it was sort of in a state of disrepair.
Okay.
And she just like follows this group of characters who live in this place.
Okay.
And it's a very cool movie. She had like a sort of cinematic device of these choreographed dance components, because it's kind of like Bucks Harbor in a way. Like its structure is kind of liminal. You know? But she weaves it together through these incredible character portraits and these interstitials of this choreographed dance, and it's intergenerational stuff. That was a big like reference for us.
Okay,
it wasn't
cool. And then what would your advice be to a filmmaker just starting out?
Filmmaker, photographer, person pursuing this in any way.
Yeah,
just try to do something that you feel like you just have this burning desire to explore this facet of something.
Yeah.
Usually that's somehow connected to yourself in a way.
Yeah.
You know? I think at a practical level, try to do things that are cheap and close.
That you have access to.
Yeah. You can just like revisit over and over and over again, and you're not in some onerous position where you're like, I got to get back to Zimbabwe to film like this other part of this, because it's hard to do that. And I did that. I moved I moved out of the United States, and I lived for a long period of time. But in part, that was because I wanted to try to be involved in those types of stories.
Right.
And I wanted them to be close.
Right.
It's this world is so interesting.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting place. And it's interesting everywhere.
Everywhere.
If you're like thinking in the right way.
Yeah. Whether it's a small fishing village in Maine or.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. The stories are everywhere.
Amazing. Pete, thank you so much, man. This has been a blast.
It's been really cool. Yeah, thanks. Thanks.
All right, let's get. Next time on Doc Walks, we are joined by Elisa Payne, who is an Oscar-nominated producer for The Perfect Neighbor, which took Sundance by storm last year. She is part of Message Pictures with director Sam Pollard, among many other talented people. They've been involved in Roger Ross Williams' Stamped from the Beginning documentary and other awarded films, so you're not going to want to miss this one. She's here in Austin for Doc Days at Austin Film Society, and we are thrilled to be joined by Elisa Payne. So stick around next week for that one, next time on Doc Walks.
Doc Walks is created, produced, and edited by my friend Ben Steinbauer of The Bear.
Hello. And my friend Keith Maitland of Go Valley.
Thanks for tuning in.
Follow us at Doc Walks Pod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.